I think the first immediate challenge, and I'm now taking all those challenges as great lessons, learning by doing. Number one,
Mm-hmm.
um, writing and publishing books tends to be a slow process,
Mm,
especially if you want to do it very well. So it's actually a test of patience. So when I
mm.
started writing my first book way back in 2006, I was expecting that within weeks I would see the book published. But then there was this whole editing process that came in between. You might
Mm.
be interested actually to know that my first manuscript, when it came from the editor, I almost gave up because it was
Mm.
all read, it was all criticized, read, it was almost like questioned. I almost felt like maybe I'm not made for this. But then I got encouragement from the same editor, and then I had to pursue. So publishing tends to be slow.
Mm.
It is arduous. That's the word that I can use. It's very
Mm.
slow. It can be painful.
Welcome, viewers, to yet another exciting moment in studio where we dive in, zeroing in on testimonies. It's a motivational platform, as you know, it's an inspirational hub, as you know, anchored on the word of God, Proverbs 11:25. Whoever brings blessings will be enriched, and one who waters, he himself will be watered. I believe that as people in studio will be sharing their testimonies, their lives will be watered as your life will be watered. Not wasting much of our time, let's dive in into our studio today. We are graced with a publisher and author, Mr. Samuel Mayinoti. Allow me to welcome Mr. Samuel Mayinoti in studio today. Welcome, um, our guest.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Success Coach Paul, for having me here.
Great, great. We want to dive in into our first segment of our talk show this day. I want to tell you, viewers, that be geared up to learn, to tap into the vast treasure that our author, our publisher has to share with us today. Um, at this time and moment, we will have a commercial break and we'll come back with more. Just stay tuned, stay connected.
Thinking of writing and publishing a biography, autobiography, or memoir? Look no further. Samuel Mayinoti is an author and publisher based in Namibia. He focuses on the narrative nonfiction genre and has so far authored books that include Apostle Kapandura, The Untold Life and Ministry Story, Paul Saungweme, Journey of an African Mass Evangelist, and Ezekiel Guti, A Portrait of Leadership. He has also been a ghostwriter of 3 memoirs, the latest of which is set to be released in January 2024. He runs several seminars on the power of writing and publishing a book, marketing, and book distribution. For more, contact him on the details on the screen.
Welcome again. Yes, in studio we have Mr. Samuel Mayinoti. Welcome yet again. Just to bring to the same page with our viewers today, people might wonder who is the man behind the camera and the mic today in studio. Who is Samuel? My apologies, Samuel Mayinoti.
Thank you so much, Success Coach Paul. My name is Samuel Mayinoti. I think, in brief, I'm an author and a publisher based in Windhoek, Namibia, Southern Africa, more like Southwest Africa.
Great. Great. You have also shared with us what you do, that you're an author, you're a publisher. I have been blasted, overwhelmed with the several conversations, several platforms you have been invited to share. I have followed you on social media where you were launching books written by other authors. Can you share with us at what point did you decide to be an author, and what was your path to the publication? People might want to know.
Thank you so much. So in my case, the writing desire starts at an early age, but it was only in 1987. Of course, I understand in 1987, it's a while ago. It's about 35 years ago when a Zimbabwean author passed away. That was in August 1987. He was more like misunderstood, a bit controversial. We were young boys then. And when we read about him and started hearing about him, that he was writing books and that he was a genius, that was the first time being introduced to the word genius. And then that really sparked the interest to write way back in 1987. But I only became a published author in 2007. So that was quite some time there, 13 plus 7, 20 years later. That's when I became a published author. And my first time writing was actually more like writing academic books, school textbooks.
Amazing. 1987. Wow. And 20 years later, you become a publisher. Wow, what a journey it is. I like how you got inspired to be an author, how you got inspired to start to publish books. I might want to ask as well, and the viewers would want to know, given the schedule that you have shared, that you have written, even the academic books, and also you have also penned down other books that we shall know in our talk show today. How is your schedule like, a week or a weekly schedule, like balancing family? I believe you're a family man, and also you're a publisher. You meet different people, you interact, and also you join in other sessions that have been designed in the publication industry. How do you strike a balance? More of your typical work life, how is it like?
My typical work life depends on the project or projects at hand. So at times it can really become quite overwhelming. Like I'll just give you an example. This year, from January up to now, I've worked on about 5 book projects.
Wow.
2 of them or 3 of them as a writer, ghostwriter, and the others as a project manager. So when you have a number of projects like that, the week really is not normal. It's not a 9 to 5 week. It's as much as has to be done. So when there's a project at hand, it's quite crazy. It can actually be a whole day and late into the night. But of course, when a project has been put aside, there can be a break, and then I can actually arrange time with family and time alone. So it's project-based, and it can be overwhelming.
Amazing. 5 books at one go. Tell me something. How do you then divide the thought? For instance, I will ask as an example, out of the 5 books, maybe there are academic books. One is for philosophy, one is for science, one is for maybe any other, maybe mental health. And a thought comes while you're driving. A thought comes, I don't know how. Maybe you share with us how you then get to write books. But like, how do you then know that this thought links up with this book? This thought, how do you divide the line in between the thoughts and the 5 books that you were working on? Yes.
So that's quite an interesting question. I think as a writer, I'm overwhelmed. Thoughts are always coming in, ideas are always coming in. So I use my phone, the notepad on my phone, where if something just pops up, I simply have to write it down and pack it somewhere. And then with regards to these projects, it's more like the project management side, where you actually schedule, you make compartments, each one requires how much time in a week, and you also prioritize which one is urgent, which one has to come out first. So I'm not like all over the place. It's more like, scheduling and having a schedule to know that of the 5 projects that I'm working on, which one is a priority, each one has got its own timeline, and that these timelines don't clash and they don't overwhelm me to the point of being unproductive.
Wow, that's treasure there. I'm I'm getting something there. You're motivating me to also write the book. Yes, wow. Like I also had this question, but as you were then sharing what you have just shared, it was also kind of answered, because I was also going to ask, given that maybe I'm chasing this one book title, maybe on mental health, then another thought comes in. Do I chase the squirrel, chase the new idea and dump the one that I was working with? Or you finish this one and you go on that one? But you mentioned about writing in your phone and you pack it. Wow, that's a lesson learned there, that you just write it down and you pack it. Wow, that's very interesting. I'm getting to learn there. And you also mentioned that you're working as a project manager, and it's the other books you're also writing. Can you take us through, describe your writing process? How do you do you outline? Do you plot? Do you plan? How do you go about writing a book?
Thank you so much, Success Coach Paul, for that important question. So maybe first of all, I need just to make clear to the viewers that my genre or my space of writing is nonfiction. So there is the academic books, and then the other one, which we call narrative nonfiction, where I write mostly biographies, memoirs, and I also ghostwrite autobiographies. So with nonfiction, one can hardly do without outlining. At least one has to have an idea in terms of where they want to go to. So I actually do an outline, but I don't enslave myself to the outline. And I do lots of research. If it is a biography, for an example, or a memoir, I have to interview the subject, who is like my main source of information. And the interviews can actually be quite extended. It can be like tens of hours spread over a week or two. I remember the latest book that I have written, which is yet to be released. It's actually published now, but yet to be released. I had meetings with the subject for up to 31 hours. And after that, I do what I call rough transcriptions. And after the rough transcriptions, I begin to sort of like hammer out the story in terms of structure, in terms of how I want it to go. But there is also that organic element that comes in. So it won't really come out as I envisage it, because it sort of like evolves after I've put an outline. So I do an outline, but I don't enslave myself to an outline.
Interesting. Wow. I hope the young self out there is learning, is tapping and listening and flowing with the treasure that you are sharing today. You mentioned about the 31 hours. That's not a joke. That's commitment. That's sacrifice there. That's determination. You are determined to achieve your goal. And you spoke about writing biographies, narrative, a way of penning down what you receive. Maybe the first question might be, how do you receive? Many people say, I dream. It just comes like a flash. How do you? That's the first question. How do you receive that which you write? Yes, biography. You might also get an interview with the person, write down. But on other books, maybe that are not specifically biographies, how do you receive the content? And yeah, that's my first question before I jump into the other one that's burning in my heart.
Thank you so much. So being a writer who is mostly dealing with nonfiction, there isn't much of inspiration, especially with regards to academic books. It's a matter of like looking at what the market, the niche market requires, and then looking at what is in the market and trying to create what we call a point of departure, to say that if the market has got this, how do we bring up a product that is different and possibly better than what we've seen in the market? So with academic books, it's quite flat. It's quite like intentional. But then with biographies and memoirs and what I call narrative nonfiction, I have to be interested in the subject. That is like the
Wow.
person I'm going to write about.
Yep.
I really have to be interested. I have to be an admirer of the person that I want to write about. And that becomes quite an overwhelming book idea. I have to pursue the person because I admire them. I'm interested in their story. I'm inspired by their story. That motivates me to sort of like pursue the whole writing process with all the pain that goes and comes with it.
Amazing. Amazing. You have to connect with the person so that you can be able to write in detail about that person. Tell us something. Among your books you authored, which one stands out? And also, can you briefly walk us through, just briefly walk us through the book? Yes.
Thank you so much. So far, like I've indicated, I've worked on about 5 biographical books as a writer and also as a ghostwriter. So as a ghostwriter, it simply means somebody has got a story. I draw the story from like a deep well through interviews, and I write the story like I'm success coach Paul. And then I sort of like don't get the credit in terms of being identified as the author. But in all the processes, and you have asked me which one is your best book so far, with the 5 books that I've written, I tend to value all of them in the sense that the first one was more like myself, getting initiated into the space of biography writing. So I regarded it as quite the first learning platform. I had a lot of learning out of that one. And when I look back, it does not qualitatively match my latest book. But then I value it because it was my first and it gave me somewhere to start learning from. It was learning by doing. And I think just like maybe with parents or with women, maybe, the latest child tends to sort of like be favorite in a way, the newborn baby. So my recent book, my latest book, which is called Ezekiel Guti, A Portrait of Leadership. It actually is recent, but it came out in 2021. It's my latest. Becomes the best in the sense that it is built up from lessons accumulated through the process of writing the preceding books. And I actually have another book, like I've indicated, it's already published, but not yet released. I can't talk about it now, but actually, if it is out, it will become like the best because it is accumulated from the experience of the preceding ones. Yeah.
Great. Wow. We are learning. We are learning a lot about how you connect with the author and also how you then bring about the best out of the book. And you mentioned about Ezekiel Guti, the Portrait of Leadership. Can you briefly walk us through the book? What exactly is the book about? And what are the main pointers in the book?
Thank you so much, Success Coach Paul. This book, when I started writing it, it went through an evolution. At first, I simply wanted to write it as what is called a treatise or a treatise, which is more like focusing on one subject about leadership. But then I wanted to do it differently. I've read a lot of leadership books. I'm still a keen reader of leadership books. But then I wanted to say, how can I write something different? A lot of leadership books, in my view, tend to tell rather than show leadership. So the aim of this one was to show leadership. So then I focused on Apostle Ezekiel Guti, the late, as a case study vis-a-vis his achievements. This is somebody who I indicated in the book actually that what he has achieved in one lifetime might require several lifetimes for other people to achieve. So looking at that vast achievement of his, worldwide influence, a transnational organization touching 166 countries, at least with his ministry, a university, a hospital, my beginning point was, how does this happen? How does this man lead? So that was the idea. So I wanted to show leadership rather than tell leadership. Telling leadership will be 5 steps of leading, 3 steps of leading. 5 characteristics of a leader. That is more like telling leadership. But in this book, I was like showing leadership, that this is how this man has done it, and this is how he continues doing it. So that was basically the point of departure in writing this book. So it's like a commentary on his leadership, drawing from views and perspectives of many people. So I interviewed a lot of people, some who met him as early and as far back as 1960, all the way coming to the 2000s. So it is like views and perspectives and interpretations of a number of people, apart from other sources like his books.
Wow. Wow. I like what you say, that you were showing leadership. There's a difference between telling about leadership and showing leadership. And I assume as people will read your book, I believe after this show, people are going to flock to buy that book. Already, the book has already been in the market and being read in different nations and states. I want to believe that as people read the portrait of leadership, they are now seeing the genuineness, seeing the footsteps that have been walked by Ezekiel Guti in leadership, something practical they can relate to. I like your angle of bringing it down there, where you had to interview people, you had to interact with people, you had to sit down with people and get the correct things to put and to pen in the book. I'm really being motivated there. You also mentioned about being a king reader. Maybe viewers might want to learn from you as an author, a publisher. What are the books? Maybe they might be among the ones that you have written, or other authors out there that you can recommend to other authors to read. Maybe a young self out there might be wondering what type of books can he or she tap into, or what type of books favor you, that inspire you as well, that can also be a source of inspiration to our viewers who are watching today.
Thank you so much, Success Coach Paul. So I will mention one or two books, but overall, I would say that a person who aspires to be a writer, for an example, has to read within the genre of their interest. So if somebody is aspiring to write fiction, they have to read a lot of fiction. If somebody is aspiring to write motivational books, they have to read a lot of motivational books. If somebody is aspiring to become a biographer, they have to read a lot of biographies so that they see what is in the market. They see the styles and approaches of other writers, so that when they're trying to start their own journey as a writer, then at least they know what space they want to occupy and what value they want to add. But coming back to your question, in terms of what books I've read, what books or authors that I admire or I've admired, the first author who really inspired me quite a lot, and I met his book, I came across his book way back in 1993, that's some 30 years ago, was Dr. Miles Monroe. His book then that I read was Understanding Your Potential, Discovering the Hidden You. I really found that book overwhelming. It was like, it just broke all the perspectives that I was harboring at the moment. And I discovered that the world is full of infinite possibilities. And one thing that I remember from his books and his statements was that, what lies ahead of you and what lies before you is nothing compared to what lies within you. So that's one book that I could recommend any other person to read. But then, I read, like I've indicated, nonfiction. So I look at other writers, and the best writers so far that have inspired me in terms of the biographical genres, one of them is actually called Martin Meredith. So Martin Meredith writes history, but the way he writes history, he writes it as narrative nonfiction. Narrative nonfiction is a true story well told. A true story told in style. So it's factual, but at the same time, it's interesting. So Martin Meredith has been actually great. And his book of 5,000 Years History of Africa, that's one of his books where he just writes the history of Africa in one sweep. This is 5,000 years, but he sort of like condenses it and makes it accessible and palatable to a reader. I really admired that. And the other writer whom I enjoy a lot, who also has inspired me, is called Manning Marable. So Manning Marable is a biographer and is well known for having written a biography of Malcolm X. Somebody that people are beginning to appreciate only now. But the way Marable writes is also amazing and outstanding. So Miles Monroe has been quite chief in terms of the authors I admire.
Wow, surprisingly, I actually have in my library Discovering Your Potential by Dr. Miles Monroe. Wow, thank you so much for that wide angle of presenting what people should read. They should read something aligning with their genre. Yes, that's very true. That the more I align with things in my genre, I get inspired more and more, and I learn from the best. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, tell us, Mr. Samuel Mayinoti, in your journey, 20 years now, after 20 years, you become a publisher. But from that day you started, what have been the challenges that you have met in the journey? And assuming most of them you have overcome them. So the question is, the challenges that you might have faced or that are likely common in the publication career path, and how best did you personally overcome such challenges for the benefit of maybe that young publisher who's actually facing a similar sense of challenge, or it might be another challenge, but challenges are challenges. How best did you overcome, and what were the challenges?
Thank you so much for that question, Success Coach Paul. Publishing is quite a unique industry, and book writing is quite a unique pursuit. I think the first immediate challenge, and I'm now taking all those challenges as great lessons, learning by doing. Number one, writing and publishing books tends to be a slow process, especially if you want to do it very well. So it's actually a test of patience. So when I started writing my first book way back in 2006, I was expecting that within weeks I would see the book published. But then there was this whole editing process that came in between. You might be interested actually to know that my first manuscript, when it came from the editor, I almost gave up because it was all read. It was all criticized, read. It was almost like questioned. I almost felt like maybe I'm not made for this. But then I got encouragement from the same editor, and then I had to pursue. So publishing tends to be slow. It is arduous. That's the word that I can use. It's very slow. It can be painful, but it is fulfilling in the sense that when you deliver the book, you have this sense of accomplishment. It's a reward in itself that I started on this thing and I've gone through it. I will give you this statistic that about 95% of people who start writing books do not complete them. So when you finish your first book, you should know that you are within the 5% pass rate. So for me, that gives me a lot of fulfillment. A lot of authors start writing books, but they don't finish. So the ability to finish, it's a reward and in itself. So that's about it. So maybe what I would call challenges would mean like it's a test of patience. And even the money, because at times people think writing is money. The money doesn't come as fast as selling bread. I think people also need to know that, such that to any person who wants to embark on writing and publishing, I would tell them that if money is the motivation, they might not take off or they might not go far. The idea is you have to have an overwhelming desire to say that I want to communicate. There is value that I want to put out there. If money comes, that's a bonus, but essentially it has to be another motivation and never money. So challenges quite a lot. And I think with the first book, anyone, when you write a first book, you are known. So people question you a lot to say, who is this person? What is their motivation? What are they trying to do? So at times you might have people either who underestimate you, who underrate you, especially when you are beginning on the journey. People might think like, oh, there is nothing new that you can give. that can be a challenge, but that becomes a lesson as well, and a test of your tenacity and vision.
Wow. Wow. You spoke about patience, being patient, that it's not there and there that you make money, or there and there that your book can go on the market. You mentioned about as well the editor bringing back so much red crossed lines on your manuscript. I'm learning a lot there, that yes, you had all that you had and you put it on paper, but you had to allow it to go through a process, a process of proofreading, a process of another eye viewing it. And I like that. It also takes me to the next question that I had. But before I go to the next question, I also wanted to comment as well about the aspect of money that you mentioned. Yes, it's also true as the business ethic that if people start businesses because their primary goal is to make money, they won't make money. But if it's their primary role is to satisfy or to solve a solution, to solve a problem, to bring solutions into the society, into the community, surely they will make money. That's very true. And also, I hope the viewers are learning. They are writing down there that patience is needed, and also the desire to to meet that fulfillment when the book is out. Yes, money when it comes, it's a bonus, as you said. I like it how you put it across. Then also the question that I would want to ask is, yes, you send books to your editor and he does or she does what she does, but tell me, do you have a role model whom you interact time and again? You tap into their treasure, resource, walk of fame. Tell us, do you have a role model, an advisor? Yes.
Very interesting question, and thank you for that. So, maybe the names that I mentioned already, the authors that I mentioned, Miles Monroe, who is late, and Marable, who is also late, and Martin Meredith, who is still alive. So there are these authors that I look up to. I read their works and I enjoy their works. I look up to them as inspiration. But then as a writer, even here in Namibia, I'm part of a community of writers. Apart from, being a community of writers on Facebook, I'm also part of a community of writers in Namibia. For an example, if there is a book discussion that is taking place at some place in town, I attend and meet different authors. So at times, I tend to be open to learn from every author and every person who has published a book, because they normally bring experiences that one can draw from. So I attend a lot of book events, and I've discovered that when you attend book events, book lovers are not a big community, especially in my part of Africa. They are a minority. They're like a minority tribe. So when you attend one book event, you go to the next one, you likely meet the same people. And you go to the next one, you meet the same people. So you become like a small community, and you are doing different things, but there are these commonalities. You can share your challenges. You can also hear from others how they are overcoming the challenges that they meet. And you can also see some who are doing quite well, and you learn from it and you adapt. So I belong to a community of writers and book lovers in Namibia, and that's a small community, and I learn from everyone who is there. Somebody who is just starting, somebody who is maybe award-winning, somebody who is struggling. I just keep on learning.
Wow, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. You mentioned about belonging to a community. You mentioned about connecting with other authors in different stages. Some are studying, some are already there, sailing through. I like it as well. I'm tapping from that knowledge, from that wisdom that you are sharing. That alone, you might not, you can't make it. You just need that second person, despite their stage where they are. But there's room for people to learn something from another person. That's what I was picking up as you were sharing. Now, share with us, our publisher, Mr. Mayinoti. Maybe there's a young self out there following us right now, watching us and writing down notes, what is your advice to that young publisher, young author out there? We might not know the stage at which that author is. Maybe it's still the mind, the thoughts are still in the mind, or that person is on the first book. But can you kindly share with us some advice to some people who are there like that?
Thank you so much. My immediate advice, I've got a few pieces of advice here, but the first one is that anyone who is aspiring to write, start writing immediately. What is called free writing. Free writing simply means writing, even if you don't have a story, you don't have anything. It can be maybe keeping a journal. It can be summarizing in a diary. At least be a writer. Don't just keep on talking of writing, just start writing. So there's what is called free writing. Free writing simply means writing that doesn't have a purpose to say, I want to produce a book. Just start writing. And when you do that, you're already building in the attitude and the discipline of writing. So that's the first. A person has to be a doer. People just have to start writing. Whether you are keeping a diary, whether you are writing a blog, whether you are writing a whole long paragraph on Facebook, because people will read it and some will start criticizing you. So the most important thing, just start writing anything. And the next thing that I would give as advice to aspiring writers is that writing requires a lot of patience. I think I've already indicated it. When you start writing a book, you need to be patient. It might not, the process can be slower than what you anticipate. And the next thing that maybe I would give as advice is that it also requires a lot of discipline. Discipline in the sense that you have to sit down, you have to do the writing, you have to commit hours to it, you have to be consistent, you have to be working on it. And the other thing that I would put up across to aspiring writers is that writing is also a test of your character and temperament. You have to learn to be humble, number one. You need to subject your work to an editor. I think that is actually very important. So I'll share what I do. If I write a manuscript, I reach a point where I call it draft zero. And when I call it draft zero, maybe I've worked over it 5 or 10 times. It's actually a 10th draft that would qualify for draft zero in the way I do it. And when I have that draft zero, I give people who are called alpha readers. Alpha readers are people who read first my unrefined manuscript. And in my case, it's just my family. And they criticize me. They will say, this is just, look here, this is not communicating well. This is not it. This is not it, etc., etc. Then I rewrite again. After the alpha readers, if I'm a bit confident, I give to a person called a beta reader. So it's alpha, beta, AB. So I give a beta reader. A beta reader is more like somebody outside, somebody that I respect, somebody who can have a believable opinion in terms of what they think is about this book. You can also regard a beta reader as a sensitivity editor, especially when you are writing nonfiction like I do. They look at sensitivities, that the way you have portrayed this, whilst I understand what you are trying to communicate, it may be misinterpreted this way. So I give a beta reader. Then that means I have to rewrite again. And after a beta reader, the next person I have to give now is a professional editor who looks at language, who looks at content. And even after a professional editor, later on, you still need a proofreader, somebody who looks at what the editor has done. So it's quite a process that requires a bit of humility. So I would advise any author or writer to say, invest in editing, invest in quality, discipline, be humble, be patient.
Discipline, be humble, be patient. I like the process of the alpha reader to the sensitive reader. Yeah, wow. Wow, I didn't know the behind the scenes of books coming out, but yeah, me and the viewers, I believe we're learning a lot there, that for a book to have come out, a lot would have happened. And the journey takes patience. It takes commitment and sacrifice. You mentioned earlier that at some point you thought of giving up because the book came from the auditor with all reds all over it. But yeah, after some encouragement, you pulled up yourself. Wow, I'm learning a lot that yes, commitment must also be in synchronized with humbleness, to accept corrections, to not to have the final say, to say what I've written is that, but to also allow proofreaders, to also allow alpha readers, to also allow professional editors to really put a cherry on top on the cake. Wow, I'm learning. Wow. This is so enriching and educating. We have come to the last segment of our talk show, our podcast today. But allow me to extend this question to you. Over the years, you have written several books, you have worked with different people. What was the toughest criticism that you have received? And what is the greatest motivation also that you have received? Yes, over the time that you have studied up until now.
I think in terms of criticism, if I reflect back right now, I haven't seen any. At first, the editor that I talked about who marked my whole manuscript read, I thought it was criticism, but then it became quite a lesson. And right now, I'm at a stage where what I would regard as criticism is maybe a written critical review. Somebody writes about my book and they criticize it, maybe they disagree with it, and they publish it. That one I would look at it as criticism. So far, I can't really qualify. Maybe some negativity that I encounter or some passing comments that I encounter, I've tended not to qualify those as criticism. They're still below what I would call criticism. Criticism is somebody reading my book first and writing a critical review, which can give me an opportunity of even responding to something that is published. In terms of maybe the positive side, isn't it? That's part of your question.
Yes,
Every
yes.
writer normally requires affirmation and encouragement. And I've received some kind words from people that I don't know who reach out to me who say, look, I've read your book and it's very powerful. I think that goes a long way to a reader. So to a writer rather, to a writer, it's more like affirmation. And also the stature of people who affirm you. So you might have a person, of a high stature who says, look here, I've read your book and it is great and I'm learning one or two lessons from it. So it's more like the affirmations that I get from readers out there, some of whom I don't know. They reach out to me on Facebook. We end up chatting on WhatsApp, talking about the books that I've written. So it's more the affirmation and it fuels me a lot and encourages me a lot. So the challenges, I've converted them to be lessons. The positives, it's more like the affirmations I get from people that I write about and also those who read my books.
Great. Wow. Wow. Taking criticism at its lowest level, where you take it as a learning curve rather than as an offensive a platform. I like that as well. It keeps people going, that whatever comes, I should learn from it, not to be offended by it. And as I said, we are now wrapping up our show today. But allow me to ask as well our guest today to share all the social media platforms that he is available on so that people can access the vast treasure. You mentioned about being on Facebook. So maybe you can share with the viewers your handles so that they can also subscribe and also like the pages that you administer as an administrator.
Sure. Facebook, we have actually a group that I would encourage people to join. It's called the Book Writing Tour, where we talk of all things writing and share some nuggets about writing. And then also on Twitter, I am on Twitter. And then I'm beginning to be on Instagram as well. Somebody is introducing me to Instagram, especially with the other types of books that we are writing. There are quite a number of demographic characteristics of people who are following Instagram. So it's basically Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and of course, WhatsApp. And it's keeping on. It's going to be expanding. Very soon, I'm just finishing working on an author's website where, again, it will be quite interactive. And I'll have a mailing list to be in touch with aspiring writers and readers and prospective readers.
Wonderful. And in closure, what are your parting words? I know you have shared some advice to that young author there, but as we wrap up, what are your parting words to the viewers regarding the publication industry, regarding all, or summing up all that we have discussed or talked about today?
Yeah, thank you so much, Success Coach Paul. I'm just saying to aspiring writers, just to start
Mm.
writing, just to start
Mm.
something, have something that you have written. You can always go back to it and criticize yourself.
Mm.
Learn to self-edit your work, but
Mm.
the most important thing is be a doer. Just to start writing. I think that's
Mm.
sort of like my parting words. It's very important just to start writing, either a diary, a journal, a blog, and once you do that, you're already instilling within yourself the discipline of what it takes to write a book. And to those who are already in the process of writing books, I would say that invest in quality.
Mm.
Invest in quality, invest in editing, invest in professional design, because once you put a book out there in the public, it's already there. You can't even retrieve it. Once some people have handled it, it's already out there, and it's quite a representation of who you are. So invest in quality, invest in an editor, because books outlive us.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Start writing today. Invest, invest, invest. Invest in quality, invest in the best graphic designers, invest all to do with the publication and the editors. Yes, thank you so much for sharing, Treasure. Thank you so much for motivating us and sharing your career path in the publication industry. Viewers, this is what we had today, as we were being taught as the pronounced author and publisher, Mr. Samuel Mayinoti, was in the studio today sharing his treasure, sharing his career path. I believe you and I have learned a lot. We have taken notes, and we are going to start to write those books. Yes, as he has said, we are going to write those books. Start now. Free writing, exercise free writing. With those words, we have come to the closure of our talk show today. I want to extend my appreciation to Mr. Samuel Mayinoti for affording time and committing time to be with us today to share his life in the publication industry. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation and being with us, with the viewers.
Thank you so much, Success Coach Paul. All the best.
Thank you to our viewers. We will meet next time. As you know, we are always coming to you with life success testimonies, motivational testimonies. We're always coming to you with people who have made it in life. And you might be there and you are feeling down, you're feeling demotivated, but we will come to you, to your home, through the social media platform, through our social page, YouTube page, Success Coach Paul. And stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe, to click the notification button, and to share. More is coming your way. This is your host, Success Coach Paul, signing out. See you next time. Bye.